It does feel safe to do things online, but the problem is that online doesn't usually translate to an in-person friendship. And it's a different type of friendship. I mean, occasionally they do, but generally they don't. And they aren't progressing the social skills as much as you would in person. Of course, you're just typing messages online. That is something that we cover as well, is online communication, because there's still sort of rights and wrongs in what you do online as well.
Welcome to the ADHD Families Podcast. I'm your host, Sharon Collon, an award-winning credentialed ADHD coach and consultant and mama and wife to a very ADHD family. I am seriously obsessed with making life easier for people with ADHD and those that support them. My business, The Functional Family, provides life-changing support and strategies for ADHD. I particularly love anything that saves time, decreases conflict, and creates space for fun. Do you want a life with your beautiful family that is more functional, fun, and full of joy? Let's explore together the wonderful and sometimes wacky world of family life with ADHD in the mix. Welcome to the ADHD Families Podcast. I am your host, Sharon Collon, an ADHD coach, a consultant, and a parenting expert, and I am so happy that you're here today. We have a treat for you. We have the incredible Vivian Dunstan. Now, she is the founder and CEO of ADHD Support Australia. She set this up back in 2013 when both her daughter and herself were diagnosed. She's an ADHD coach, a parenting coach, a certified tech addiction and digital health educator. She is certified in the peers social skills for teens and young adults. And she does a whole lot of work in this space to support those with ADHD. Today, we are narrowing in on her peer social skills program. Social skills has a way of impacting everything. I'm of the opinion that everyone needs to learn social skills, not just neurodivergents, everyone. Myself, I've benefited from doing social skills training. We're going to really break this down in this episode so you can look at social skills as a skill that can be built. It can be built. We can practice it. We can support our kids to practice it, and it can really lessen some of the rejection and hurt that our beautiful humans feel every day. Let's get to it. Welcome, Vivian. I'm so excited to be chatting with you today.
Hi, Sharon. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, I'm so excited for our chat. So tell me a little bit about your journey, if you can.
Yeah, so it goes back a little way now to 2013. I set up a support group for ADHD in the Northern Beaches. My daughter got diagnosed relatively late in life. She was 14. So, you know, as is with girls oftentimes, and especially back in those days, flying under the radar. We had that diagnosis, and myself and another friend, whose son also had ADHD, we decided that there was no support around for people with ADHD. So we set up this support group in the Northern Beaches. And that's basically what it was. And we very quickly realized there was a huge need. And I was organizing speakers every month, and we were getting people coming there from all over Sydney, Blue Mountains, South Coast, Central Coast. So it kind of started from there, really. And of course, over time, it's evolved, and I've evolved. I've had a diagnosis of ADHD as well in my 50s in the last few years. So I guess in terms of, well, of course, in 2020, everything changed. I stopped doing the online talk. Not the online talks. I stopped doing the in-person talks because of COVID, and everything went online. And so, the speakers have been in all realms, from, medication to meditation and everything in between, really. I do like to bring a holistic sort of approach to things. I'm quite a believer in, getting all the foundations right and uncovering all the stones, and so on. But yeah, that's basically the story. And then I sort of started doing the parenting course, which was in person, and now that's online. I also do the peers social skills course because, again, it's all things that I realized and from my own experience were needed. And, that sort of trying to help others in that situation. So, for example, with the social skills, I had a speaker come in to talk about the peers social skills program because I knew that people kept asking me like, oh, my kids are suffering. They've got no friends, they're excluded, they're bullied, teased, and so on. And, I knew from my own experience that that's really painful for the child and for the parent. So when I saw the talk and what she said about the program, that's when I decided to go and do the training and become a facilitator for that program. So I've been doing that for 4 years as well. So everything kind of it evolves as I sort of see that need, I guess. And so yeah, I've been doing that for 4 years. And now another thing that's evolved is the digital parenting program that I've recently started, because this was another thing that I was seeing. So I'm seeing a lot of parents in the parenting course, and you'd probably know this as well. What's your biggest pain point, and what's the biggest leverage, and what do people reward kids with? What do they take away when they want to take something away? It's usually screens, and screens are usually a flashpoint as well. And then, of course, with my social skills groups, there's a lot of people who are lonely. They're looking for connection, and then they're tending to look online for that connection. And so, I started to look more into it and, researched and, became a digital health and wellness educator. And that's why I thought this is really needed. It's really affecting, well, not just, kids in our community, but in the community as a whole. So, yeah, I started this digital parenting program to help families to, cope with that conflict over screens, to create sort of healthier digital habits within the house. And, that goes for us too, right? Everyone's a little bit addicted to their phone. Everybody's a little bit, overusing screens and things like that. But the thing is, and people will say, well, is it an addiction or not? But, I just sort of feel like if it's pushing other areas of your life to one side, they're not socializing with their friends, they're not getting out, they're dropping out of activities, they're not interacting with the family, they're just in their room on their screens, or, then that's when it becomes a problem. And sometimes for our community. And actually my next talk, because I have the monthly talks, the next talk is on substance abuse and addictions in the ADHD population. So that'll be interesting to see where that comes in, because actually screen addiction is as much of an addiction as anything else. It raises the dopamine in the brain, and creates that addictive cycle. So I'm not also always very careful to apportion any blame to parents or sort of make them feel bad that this is something that's happened, because it's all taken us by surprise. It's kind of crept in very quickly, hasn't it, over a very, very short period of time. And we've never been here before as parents. We don't really know how to deal with this. And we didn't know what the result would be of handing our child a device or a phone or whatever. So sometimes parents are finding themselves in that position now and not really knowing how do I get back out of this? How do I create a healthy, benchmark or habits to move forward? So sorry, I've gone on a little bit there.
No, oh my goodness, I've got so many questions. I want to back it up just a little bit by giving the listeners a bit of a description of what ADHD Support Australia does, because, just in case, I'm assuming that most people would be aware, but I would love to let people know that aren't aware. What would you say is the elevator pitch for ADHD Support Australia?
Well, as I say, it started out life as a support group, and then it's evolved to add on all of these different things that I see as being needed and important. So basically, I wanted it to be a sort of one-stop shop, really, for people to think, oh, okay, I've got this diagnosis of ADHD, because at the end of the day, that happened to me, and it probably happened to everybody. You're told that your child's got ADHD, and then you're like, well, now what? And the pediatrician might say, well, maybe get some parent training, maybe get some psychology sessions. Here's your medication script or whatever. And that's basically it. And then you're kind of on your own with it, and you've got so many questions. And that's, I suppose, what I wanted to achieve. So, there's a lot of information on the website. And also, the other thing that I wanted to do was I've got a directory on the website. So there's a directory of professionals, services, and resources. I think you're on it, Sharon. So lots of ADHD coaches, pediatricians, psychiatrists. It's growing. And obviously it's an ongoing thing that I'm building up. But I just wanted some people, because that's the most emails I get is like, I can't find a pediatrician, I can't find a psychiatrist. Who do you recommend? And I'm like, well, I can't recommend people all over the country. How can I, know that? So I wanted to sort of create that as well. So it's like I can come here for information. I can come here to find a professional, somebody to help me, maybe some products. Like I've got recommended reading on there. So oftentimes when we'll have a speaker, I'll say, well, what book do you recommend on this topic? And they'll give me a book, and then, I'll add it on there. So a lot of them are recommended by my experts, and so on, and there's a blog on there. But, I used to do a lot more sort of awareness raising and more sort of advocacy as well. I used to have meetups and self-care events and things like that. But obviously, as it's evolved and I'm doing more and more, I just I can't do all of those things. Like I do have a big Facebook group. It's got about 40,000 people in there now. So there's sort of support in there as well. But, the thing is, over time, in that time that I've been doing this, which is over 11 years now, there's a lot more people come to the arena, I suppose. Back when I started, there was about 2 ADHD coaches in Australia, one of which I think, of course, that you had on, Michelle Toner, done a great amount of work and advocacy, and another guy that lived around here. So, and now, like, because I've done the coaching, I've obviously met a lot of people, and I know that you've done the coaching now as well, or the coach training. There's a lot more people coming into the space. We've got ADPA that's been set up that wasn't there before, kind of advocating and doing a lot of that work, because, that work was needed. And I sort of tried to do a little bit at the beginning, but you can't do everything. I tried to sort of provide those sort of supports that I saw as being needed. Yeah. So does that answer your question?
Yes, yeah. One thing that ADHD Support Australia does really well is, connecting the community with experts, like experts that they might not even know exist. You've got such an array of topics, like of these masterclasses and things that you do that are so useful to people, and they can literally, jump in and watch them. It's fabulous.
Yeah. I mean, some of them are from the US, some of them are from here. I try and get, such a wide variety, as I've said, and also things that you don't always see that much of. Like I mentioned, maybe gut health, or, I've got somebody coming up talking about, eating, and people that have sort of eating disorders or things like that. And I've got one coming up on money, managing money and things like that. So it is a very wide, array of speakers that I have. And yeah, it helps to connect people with those topics. Yeah, as I say, maybe things they hadn't sort of really thought of before. And, that, like I said before, when I started this, it was kind of like what I wished I'd known when I started the journey. And you probably feel the same. Like once you've researched it, like that's one thing. But like it takes a long time to do that, to get up to speed with everything. So yeah, my reason for setting up ADHD Support Australia, and well, as I said, it started as the Northern Beaches ADHD Support Group. And then when I thought of all these people coming from all around to the group, I was like, this needs to be online so it's more accessible to everybody. And that's when I changed my name to ADHD Support Australia. I started like the membership platforms. So for any of those people just joining now, that, have missed any of those great talks that we've had, and want to continue to see the new talks, I've got all of that stored on my membership site, so people can become a member. They get sent the link to watch the live talk if they want to ask questions, but they've also got access to that back catalogue as well, which is really fantastic. Yeah.
I think it's amazing. And I just, want to honor you a little bit, because I always feel like the best work is done from like a mum who's trying to find answers. Like when someone's got that drive to find answers and support their family. And like you said, it's what you wish you had at the start. Now, I want to change gears a little bit to talk about social skills, right? Because this is something that I think a lot of, the teens, preteen arena in our beautiful community are really struggling with. Now, we've got the digital problem here that we're head down in phones, but we're also got a real lack of social skill training. And it's not just for neurodiverse kids. It's across the board. We do not have anyone yelling out really about what social skills are, and we say silly things like read the room. Well, who teaches people to read the room, right? How do you do that? So I'd love you to give us some examples of the types of thing people learn in your peer support or social skills programs.
Yeah, so there's a few things there. It's not just our community. I think obviously we've had COVID, we've had lockdowns, that's changed things. Everything's gone online for our young people. They weren't at school. Some of them felt anxious going back to school. So when you're not out there in the real world, you do kind of lose the skills in some ways. So, that's happened, and that's exacerbated things. The digital stuff, obviously is, progressed in that time as well. But a lot of people realize that people with autism have those issues with social skills, but they don't always associate it with ADHD, but it's often there as well. So I see two types of people coming to my social skills classes, and some of them, probably more the ones with ADHD, they might seem very chatty and very confident, but sometimes, that's the issue. Sometimes they talk too much. Sometimes they interrupt. Sometimes they go on about one topic of interest, and they're not, as you say, reading the room. They're not assessing the interest from the person or people that they're talking to. So in the social skills program that I do, it's very, and actually it was designed for people on the spectrum by a clinical psychologist in UCLA, Dr. Lorgerson. So it's not something I've made up. It's an evidence-based program with research behind it that shows that, it works. It's about going through the concrete steps that everybody needs to know so you can fill in all of those gaps. So, for example, people might say, oh, well, I want to meet new people. I want to talk to new people. I want to talk to a new person or a group. And people go, well, yeah, just go and say hi. Just go and introduce yourself. That's what you do. But actually, what Dr. Lorgerson did was she researched what ecologically valid social skills are. And by that, I mean the skills that socially successful people actually use, not just what you might think, oh, just go and say hi, just, rock up and introduce yourself. She researched what people actually do. And then that in the course is kind of broken down into little steps. So it's like, okay, so you want to approach a group. You're not going to go and interrupt their conversation that they're having and, just say hello. And then they're just standing there looking at you and thinking, oh, who's this that's turned up, interrupting what we're talking about. We make steps. We might say, oh, stand a little way away from the group, but, all of the provisos, don't look like you're loitering, maybe be looking at your phone or a book or something and be listening in. Like, what are they talking about? Is that a topic that I can, contribute to? If they talk, if I saw a group of people talking about, I don't know, cricket, I don't know anything about cricket. So if I join that conversation, it's going to be awkward. I'm going to have to change the subject. I don't really know what to say. So, that's one thing. Have a listen. Can you join? Move a little bit closer. Wait for a small pause. You don't want to interrupt. but it's never a perfect pause because people talk quickly. You've got to, come in. So you're going to come in on topic. You're going to talk about what they're talking about. Ask them a question about it. Make a comment. Maybe there's a compliment somewhere, but, say they're talking about some TV show. You might come up and go, oh, like, oh, you're talking about X, who's your favorite character? Oh, I love that show, and then once you're there, you have to assess the interest because you're not always accepted into a conversation, are you? I'm sure, Sharon, you've had the same experience as I have of going to talk to a couple of people and they're not really that interested. And, we can normalize that and say, well, why are you sometimes not accepted? Maybe they wanted to talk about a particular thing. Maybe they've got private conversation. Maybe they're busy. It could be anything. But, you're going to then assess the interest there. You're going to be like, okay. And when we say assess the interest, that's what you say, reading the room. How are they, are they looking at you? Are they asking you questions? Are they smiling? Or are they, doing something else? Are they kind of turning away? Are they not asking you questions? Are they not talking to you, not smiling? Maybe they're saying short answers or nothing at all. All of those types of things so that And then we also tell them, what do you do if they don't accept you? That's another thing. How do you exit the conversation? But basically, that's what you're doing. You're not just going up and saying hi. You're going up, you're coming in on topic, you're asking a question, making a comment, assessing the interest. Hopefully, then you start a good two-way conversation. You'll be remembering all of the things that we've already talked about, not interrupting, not talking too much, having a good two-way conversation so that it's, you're asking about them, they're asking about you. And maybe at the end of that, if you don't know them, you might say, by the way, my name's Vivian. And that's introducing yourself, but that's not always relevant. So what we're doing is we're not just going up and saying, hi, I'm Vivian. We're doing it in a sort of step-oriented way, and that's what we're teaching. So
I've got so many questions. It's so exciting. So tell me how you mentioned there about exiting the conversation, because this is something that I don't do gracefully. So when it's not going well, I tend to double down on like trying to correct the course, right? correct the course of action. Can you tell me how, and for the listeners at home who might also have those situations where you go in to talk to a group and you realize that they're having a private conversation and you've misstepped somehow. How do you get out of it gracefully?
Well, that's the thing. It's getting out of it with sort of dignity and grace, as you say. And you don't want to get upset. I mean, it does feel a bit embarrassing, does feel awkward. Maybe you're angry, maybe you're annoyed that they haven't, paid you any attention. But, we want to keep our cool. We want to kind of think, okay, normalize it. They're probably having a private conversation. It's not personal. It's nothing to do with me. I'm going to go and talk to somebody that does want to talk to me today. So really, it's about not reacting or not overreacting. So there's three separate situations you might find yourself in. There's a situation where you go and talk to people and they just completely blank you and never say anything. So in those circumstances, we're going to, just keep our cool and we'll kind of maybe look away and then we'll just walk away. We won't say anything. We won't do anything. Kind of trying to fly under the radar as if we've never been there. And then hopefully they'll just carry on their conversation as if we never turned up and they won't be thinking anything about us and we'll just go on our merry way. The other situation is sometimes you will turn up to a group and you'll talk and they will accept you a little bit. Maybe they'll throw you a few crumbs and talk to you, or maybe they're interested at first. They're like, oh, yeah, hello, blah, 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 answer a couple of questions. And then they're kind of going back to talking between themselves. And you feel like you're left out again. You feel like, well, they don't seem like they want to continue talking to me. And that, again, is where you need to leave the conversation. But this time, they have made an effort to talk to you at the beginning. So you don't want to just walk away because that would seem rude then, wouldn't it? If you just walk away. So this time, you're going to give what we call a short cover story, which is like, oh, well, I've got to go. See you later. something like that. So it's polite. You're not overreacting. You're just going, okay, see you later, and go. You're not waiting for them to respond either, because they may not. They may sort of say, oh, yeah, see ya, and you just walk away. So it's just these small things. It's not rocket science really, but it's kind of breaking it down. And then, the third way that we might leave a conversation is when we have been fully accepted. And then when we've been fully accepted and we're chatting away and it's great, but we have to leave, maybe we've got to get our bus or go to class or whatever, then we'll make a cover story. But just saying see ya, that would be rude because we're in a conversation. This time we make a longer one. Well, it's been really nice chatting with you. I've got to go to class now, so I'll see you later. We break it down into the actual steps. I'll see you later. Maybe if you do text them, you'll say, oh, I'll text you later. Not if you don't do that, but if they're people so there's these different ways, and it's not huge. But if you don't really know what to do, like you say, how do you do that gracefully? Really, it's about, flying under the radar, not making a huge deal out of it. And I think that's kind of theme that runs through peers is, you can't really control what other people do as well, but it's your reaction. It's the same with things like teasing and things like that. When you overreact, you're making that more fun for the person teasing you. They're able to press your buttons, but if you can not react if possible, and of course we acknowledge that any of these situations are painful, upsetting, make you feel angry or annoyed, but we've kind of got to keep a lid on it a little bit.
Oh, you just touched on so much gold there. Can you tell me a little bit, like when I'm talking to clients about social skills stuff, two of the things that come up regularly, and I'd love to see what you think about these, is number one, monologuing, and I'll leave that for you to explain what that is and what to do about that. The other one is jumping in to problem solve. So someone might say, oh, I've had a rough day for blah, 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 and they just jump in straight away to problem solve, and it sort of shuts the other person down or invalidates the other person. Can you speak to those things? Firstly, letting people know what they are.
Yeah, so the monologuing, I suppose in peers, we call it being a conversation hog. So that is when, and you might think after the conversation, oh, we had a great talk, and because you've talked a lot. This is something I have to be careful with myself as well. That we go back at the beginning of our course to talk about, what does a good conversation look like? It's a two-way conversation. As I said before, it's about, you finding out about the other person and them finding out about you. And I guess that's with new people. If it's somebody that you already know, it's still the same. It's still got to be, like a game of tennis. You're asking them something and they're answering, asking you things. You've got to make sure that it's balanced. I mean, sometimes I find that difficult because some people ask a lot of questions. And so I give a lot of answers. But then I guess what you've got to bear in mind is I need to also ask you some questions, because otherwise it's all about me. And I'm not finding it. I might leave the conversation and thinking, oh, well, I talked about myself a lot, but I didn't find out anything about how you're going today. It's difficult when that's, how you're maybe kind of programmed or you're used to doing things, but it's just being able to reflect and think, oh, I didn't realize I was doing that. So in the peers program, actually, we have role play videos that we show. So it's a little bit cringe sometimes, and the kids kind of have a bit of a laugh over them. But it shows the person doing something wrong. So we'll show somebody talking too much and the other person, and then you can see the other person's body language, like they're trying to talk and they're not being able to get a word in. She's continuing to talk and saying, oh, this happened and that happened, and the other person's getting more and more bored. And in the end, they don't look like they really want to talk anymore because it's not a conversation. In the peers program, we do what we call perspective taking. And that's kind of the point of the role play videos. They're watching the videos, And then it's not just me saying, oh, it would be this, somebody would be annoyed, somebody would feel like you weren't interested. Because I'm asking them, you're hearing back from your peers and they're saying, oh, okay, yeah, like that would be so annoying. Like she's, not letting her get a word in. She's not asking her any questions. No, and what does her friend look like? Yeah, she looks bored. She looks like she wants to get away. She's looking at her watch, whatever. And so, it's because, especially with autism, but sometimes with social skills, it's not about us. I think we always think it's, I'm anxious in a conversation. I won't know what to say. I don't feel confident. But it's actually an interaction with two people. And you've got to think about, how is this for the other person? So, yeah, it's just about helping them to understand that and to sort of reflect, I need to make this a two-way conversation. I need to be asking you as many questions as you're asking me and allowing you the time to answer them. And, we get down into the nitty-gritty of that as well. So it's not just asking questions, because you also don't want it to sound like an interview. In this case, this is an interview. So you're asking me questions and I'm talking more. But in a normal conversation, it would be, I'd be asking you more questions as well. So you don't want it to be an interview. It's got to be a two-way. And also, do you go from topic to topic to topic? In our conversation here, you've asked me a question and then you've asked follow-up questions. What we'd call follow-up questions is like, oh, okay, so you mentioned the peers program. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? That's something we'd be talking about as well. So it's not just, oh, I need to ask lots of questions. They've got to kind of follow on from each other as well. So there's that. I think there was another thing you asked me there about asking people.
The problem solver, the jumping in to solve people's problems. So this is something that I watch. I'm like fascinated by people, right? So I'm always watching people at parties and things, because I kind of believe that everyone needs to do social skill training, right? I low key think everyone benefits, myself included. Like,
well, funny you should say that, because a lot of the parents, because with the peers program, actually, I didn't mention it's a 14-week program where the teens or young adults come on every week, but also the parents do the training as well. So they are in a separate session every week as well. So they're learning what their children are learning. And oftentimes they will say at the end of it, I've learned a great deal as well. This has been really useful for me. And of course, in our community, as we know, as I'm a case in point, a lot of parents find that they do have ADHD or perhaps autism, after they've had their own kids diagnosed. So, I think there's a lot of undiagnosed things happening with the parents. And yeah, whether there is, anything or not, as you say, a lot of people can benefit from social skills. So yeah, the parents are involved as well. That means that they're able to help their kids outside of the program and after the program's finished. So yeah, sometimes it can help them too.
So I want to know a little bit about, so in the conversational dance, like, right, or the tennis match that you described there before, one thing that I see people slip up on is someone is vulnerable, someone tells something that happened that they're upset about, or maybe a challenge that they're facing, and someone missteps by going straight in for the kill with the solution, right? But they don't know the background. So because they don't know really understand what that person is going through or what it's like to be in their shoes, it actually feels invalidating for the other person to jump straight for the solution. So you might say like something like, I've been really down lately. I have missed a bunch of work because I sprained my ankle. And then the other person just comes in and goes, well, I've got a really good ankle surgeon, blah, 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 like and just totally railroads on it. Can you tell me a little bit about any tips for that? Because that's one of the most common things I see. And you watch the person who's just been vulnerable feel completely invalidated because the other person's rushed straight to the solution. But of course, people know their own solutions,
right? Well, they do. And it depends, I guess, how the other person does take that. And maybe, they do feel invalidated by it. People are always trying to help. People are always trying to jump in. And, it's showing help. I mean, do people feel upset by that? I mean, yes, you just want someone to listen to you. I think oftentimes, well, going to stereotype and say it's a bit of a man thing. Like I'd say, with my husband, it's a little bit more like, well, how can I fix this in a practical way? And sometimes people do just want to fix, don't they? Rather than just sort of sit with it. If I say, oh, something's upset me, he'll be like, oh, well, why are you doing that? Or why don't you whatever? Rather than just being like, oh, that's, sucks for you that you feel upset about that. To be honest, we don't really go into that as a theme in peers as such. I think that's probably a bit more nuanced.
And it feels a bit more adult, actually, as an
I
example.
mean, yeah, I mean, I do the young adult program as well, but that's not a specific thing that we get into. But no, I know what you're saying, and yeah, I don't know whether that's just people in our ADHD community that would do that. I think that's more sort of an everybody.
Yeah, I feel like it's a curiosity mindset too, because problems can make people uncomfortable, right? And so they want to move away from that discomfort really fast. So the quickest way to do that is to offer a solution, right? But if you have a curious mindset, like something that we're trained in as coaches, Vivian, like you kind of asking questions about it and asking, for people to so you can really understand what it's like in their shoes before, and whether you get to a part where you feel comfortable enough to offer a solution or not. It's more about, approaching everything with curiosity, which is interesting. Like it's definitely in line.
Yeah, and that's definitely something, as you mentioned, what we've learned in our coach training, but not everyone's done a coach training. So, they do want to naturally sort of go to, well, how can I help you with this? Like, how can we solve this? And then, yeah, they're not trained as a coach. So it's a lot to expect.
Can you tell me a little bit about, if you've got a teen that is struggling with social skills, and they have a lot of fear about approaching a group or making friends. Online can feel like such a safe place for our beautiful community because it's not in person. If something doesn't work out, you can just switch to the next game or get rid of that person. Can you tell me a little bit about how you can help support them to go out and give it a try and practice these skills? Because it is just a practice. It's a numbers game. It's practice, right? Can you tell me about how you would support them to do that, or how mums and dads can support their children to do that?
I mean, because some parents coming sort of feel like, oh, well, I'm coming to a social skills group and I do mine all online. So people think, oh, well, you should be doing it in person because it's social skills. But actually, I find that it's a safe space, as you said, for them to come to learn the skills. A lot of people feel like it's, they want their kids to come because it's a friendship making group. It's not that. They might make friends in the group, but really it's about learning the skills so that they can go and use them outside of the group. So I find that a lot of people, had somebody last night actually that, doesn't want anyone from their school to be there. And if you go to a local social skills group where you can get to every week and it goes for 14 weeks, so you don't want to be too far away, you might see people there. And where parents might think, oh, that would be good because maybe you'll make a friend, and we all want our kids to make friends. That's why we want them to be on the course. A lot of the time they don't want that. They don't want, they want to feel like they're in that sort of a little bit of an anonymous space where they're safe to learn the skills. So what we're doing is we're learning the skills in the program. The parents are learning the skills. They're able to practice with their parent or social coach, as we call them, as well. And then they're able to, we ask them each week, this is your homework to practice. They also do a phone call with somebody in the group as well. So something that kids don't do much these days is a phone call. We teach them how to start and end a phone call as well. They do a phone call for their homework each week. We troubleshoot what they've tried to practice as well. And so, they're able to get that practice in a safe space.
I was talking about how parents can, get their kids to overcome that fear of trying or practicing. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, throughout the program, we are encouraging parents to make sure that they're enrolling their kids in activities that they enjoy. And that could be in school, lunchtime, after school, something in the community, something that they enjoy, where they're going to meet other people that also enjoy doing that thing. So one, they've got the activity to do, they've got that source of new people to meet, they've got the chance to practice their social skills a little bit more out in the community. And so it does feel safe to do things online, but the problem is that online doesn't usually translate to an in-person friendship. And it's a different type of friendship. I mean, occasionally they do, but generally they don't. And they aren't progressing the social skills as much as you would in person. Of course, you're just typing messages online. That is something that we cover as well, is online communication, because there's still sort of rights and wrongs in what you do online as well. But it's not, they're not practicing those real in-person social skills that are so important, because at the end of the day, that child or young person is going to grow up. They need to go into the world. They need to go to uni or TAFE or some sort of training. They need to get a job, need to work with colleagues. They need to, go for interviews, talk to their boss, find a romantic partner. And we haven't really talked about that, but in the young adult program, I go into dating skills as well. Dating skills are something that people in our community struggle with, because, again, if you don't have many friendships, you're not going out as much, you're not meeting people as much, you're not having those opportunities to meet people. So obviously a lot of people do meet romantic partners online now. But there's safety around that. There's right and wrong ways of doing things. We talk about, how to let someone know you like them. We talk about flirting and incorrect or appropriate compliments, how to go on a date, what to do on a date, what to say on a date, and what about after the date. And very importantly, we also talk about consent for physical contact, because when you're relying on non-verbal cues sometimes in those situations, and you're not very good at that, wires can get crossed and things can go wrong. And sometimes I feel like some of the population are a little bit vulnerable, a little bit naive in terms of relationships. And if you don't have many friends, you're not talking about that stuff very much, you don't know that very much about it. So I think that's a really important part of the young adult program. I am actually going to be doing a standalone dating program coming up soon as well. So for people, because the teens program is very similar to the young adult program, and so if you were a teen and you've kind of grown up and think, oh, I'd like to do the dating, you don't want to do the whole program again, I thought maybe just doing a dating program would be useful for them.
What do you think a parent can do to get their children to practice social skills?
Yeah. So, as I've said, parents come on the course with them. Well, obviously, if you're not on the course, it's really just talking about how their interactions are going, and kind of troubleshooting that at home, but creating a source of friends for them, helping them with their confidence in this. If someone says, oh, you're doing that all wrong, or, don't do that, or, no wonder you've got no friends, or, you've got to keep on being encouraging, making sure that you're providing them with those places to go. The thing is, sometimes people have dropped out of doing those things because maybe they don't have the social skills knowledge, and therefore it hasn't gone well. And therefore they're like, oh, I don't really want to go back to netball because no one talks to me, and I find it awkward, or, I've got no friends or whatever. So learning the skills is, good. There's, several books on social skills on my recommended reading on my website. Obviously, it's hard to sort of say in a few minutes what you can do because it's a 14-week course. But there are some good books on there that can help with some extra tips as well. But getting them out there. And then, in our course, of course, we're trying to practice something every week. And as you practice every week, even if it's just like, well, normally you don't want to talk to anyone because you don't know what to say. So we're encouraging them to sort of, oh, maybe you're going to turn to the person next to you and, make a comment, ask a question, give a compliment. And we kind of practice that in the class. Oh, I like your pencil case. Where'd you get it? Which is some easy thing like that you might say. It doesn't have to be anything deep. And then you're assessing the interest, and then you're having, maybe a conversation. Maybe they don't want to talk to you. Maybe you get into a little bit of conversation. That's a bit of a win. And the more you do that, and the more you feel like, oh, that wasn't so bad. And actually that person did want to talk to me. And, it might have only been a couple of sentences, but we had a conversation and I know a little bit more about that person. And that's the thing. When you're talking to somebody, you have to show that you're interested in them. Everybody likes to feel like they're interesting. So that is a tip, I suppose. Make the other person feel like you're interested in them. And what does that look like? That is asking them questions. So what do you like to do on the weekend? Or what did you get up to on the weekend? That's always a great question because, then they might say, oh, well, I was playing soccer. Oh, you play soccer. What position do you play? Or where do you play? Or how long have you, they're those follow-up questions around that question that you've asked. So just an easy question like, well, what did you do on the weekend? Can elicit quite a few bits of information that you can follow up on. And if someone's asking them, I always say, never say nothing, because oftentimes people say, well, who wants to know that I just sat around watching YouTube all weekend or gaming or I didn't do anything? Like, who wants to know that? But very rarely are we doing absolutely nothing. You might have been watching TV. Say so. Oh, just had a quiet weekend, watched a bit of TV. That gives them the opportunity to go, oh, what were you watching? And then you might say, oh, I was watching whatever. And they go, oh, I love that show. Or, oh, I haven't seen that. Tell me a bit more about it. Or, so it gets the conversation going. If somebody says, what did you do on the weekend? You go, nothing. Where do they go with that? They got nowhere to go. So it's your response as well as you asking people questions, and it's showing interest in the other person. And when the other person feels like you're interested in them, they're more likely to be interested in you back.
And when you say, getting our kids out there, one of the things that I wanted to flag there is, putting them in situations where they are comfortable or where they shine, right? So my eldest had a lot of trouble with social skills, but he always had motocross, right? That he was naturally good at it. So he could go to the track and he could make friends and he could have conversations and he had like his little people because they had that shared thing and he was shining there because he was like great at it. So he had that boost of confidence. So I was thinking about translating that to some of my other kids and some of the clients that I work with. Like, where is an arena where they're shining? Like, maybe there's something that they are really good at. Maybe it's, maybe it's maths. Maybe it's, maybe it's science experiments. Maybe it's something like where can we put them that is aligning their strengths to allow them to shine, to allow them to have that little extra bit of confidence so that they can make the approach and they can join the conversation because they've already got that. They're in an arena where they're shining.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that is what I'd encourage, finding an activity that you really like. It's good if you are really good at it because obviously you feel confident in that arena, like you say with your son. Sometimes there's like kids that don't really have anything that they're super good at, but they just enjoy doing it. That's okay as well. But I'd say as well, like when you do go to these activities, there can still be a tendency to not socialize appropriately as well, even though, you have a little bit of kudos if you're good at something or, you've got that activity to talk about. That's great. We want to really also keep the momentum going on that and to try to, have those conversations and make an excuse to get together outside of that. Because, you can have friends at school, you can have friends at an activity, but if you're not getting together outside of that, you're not sort of cementing that friendship and making it stronger. So, say, your son was at the motocross and, he's chatting with someone, maybe he's going to say, oh, do you want to catch up and work on your bike on the weekend? Or I don't know what they do. Or do you want to, the new track that I found, it's kind of near where you live. Do you want to come over and do that one time? You're kind of just throwing out, and this is something that they struggle with because they don't want that rejection. They're worried about the rejection. But encouraging them to do that, because if you don't ask, may have been in the same situation yourself. I know sometimes I do. I get busy and I don't call a friend, and then I think, oh, I feel like I've got no friends. And then, the minute that you message them and say, hey, do you want to get coffee? Do you want to go for a walk? You're like, okay, I can fill up a week with some social activities. But when you don't do it and you're relying on somebody else to do it, it might not happen. And that doesn't mean it's because other people don't want to do it. It's just because other people, maybe they are scared to ask as well. So just throwing it out there like, hey, I was just, and think about it beforehand, the thing that you might ask them to do. And it's the same idea for dating. You don't just say, do you want to go on a date? You've already thought about it beforehand. You've thought, oh, well, I know this person likes surfing. Maybe I'm going to say, hey, I'm going surfing on Saturday. Would you like to come? And it's a bit more casual than saying, well, do you want to go on a date? And it was the same with friendships. I'm going to go try out this new track. Like, it'd be great if you come, do you want to come with me? And once they've had a get together and it's gone successfully, and that's something, another module that we talk about in the course, how do you make that go successfully? Follow up on that, keep the momentum going, message. That's an excuse to message. It's not just an out of the blue message. You're like, oh, really enjoyed, the ride, we should do that again sometime, and keep that chat going so that, you've got that chat outside of the activity. You're going to see them at the activity again. And then hopefully if your get together's gone well, maybe that's something you're going to do again. But yeah, getting together with people outside of the activity or outside of school or work or whatever it is, that's when you really get to know people. You're able to talk to them more. You're making memories together. You're having fun together. And that's, really how friendships or stronger friendships form, isn't it?
Oh, look, I have learnt so much today. Just thank you so much for your time, Vivian. You've shared so many gold, practical tips, to get us thinking about social skills and get us thinking about, how we approach this really tricky thing to navigate, it is tricky. It's tricky for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's very nuanced, and we take it for granted sometimes. I think that's the good thing about peers is that it breaks it down into those steps that you wouldn't really think about. And I liken that a bit to where someone's struggling to learn to read. One kid will just do it really easily, and the other person's really struggling, and they need more explicit instruction to be able to get that, the phonics and the, with that extra help. And it's the same with social skills. Sometimes it needs to be broken down into the smaller chunks so that people can get the hang of it. And then they're like, oh, okay, so I know what to do now. And then when you know what to do, you feel more confident to move forward with it and give it a go.
And what I'm taking away is that, and what I'd love for people to take away, that it is a skill that can be taught, and it's like something that we can build on. It's not something that you're either good at or you're not good at. You can work on it and develop friendships and develop relationships and practice. And sometimes you will bomb out and sometimes you will do okay, and that's okay too.
Yeah. And on that, some people do criticize it and say, well, people shouldn't have to be told what to do. They should just be themselves. And, that's fine. Obviously not forcing anyone to come to social skills training. It's people that want to have that training. But when you think about it, we're all using social skills all of the time. We're using them now. I'm not doing anything that might make people, well, I hope not, might make people think, oh, that's a bit odd, or that's a bit rude, or, things like that, you have to kind of act appropriately in society. Otherwise, people are going to judge you. And, if you don't mind people judging you, that's fine to, carry on. But, yeah, like I say, some people think that you shouldn't need to. Other people want to.
Yeah, but I think the flip side is for a lot of people not knowing that they can build social skills causes people a lot of hurt. Not having social skills causes individuals and our kids a lot of hurt. So, if it's something as simple as, teaching them how to approach a group and teaching them that they can choose to use or not use, it's completely optional, but it's giving them tools that they can draw upon if they want to. That's powerful.
And I think overall as well, it's, once you use those tools and you feel more confident, oftentimes it's the confidence. Because when you're not confident and you don't reach out to people and you don't talk to people, people can't get to know the amazing person that you are. And that's really sad, that you're going to be an awesome friend to someone, but because you don't say anything or you don't reach out to people, that nobody knows that. So, and I sort of see quite a few young people in that position, and that's why I find it really rewarding to sort of try to move the needle in some way towards because it does impact on all of your life really, and as I said, that can be in work, in romance, friendships, even your education and so on, getting jobs, all sorts of areas. So, it is a really important thing. It's primarily we want to make friends and be happy, but it has wider implications as well. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your wonderful knowledge with us today, Vivian. I'm so happy to have you on the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the ADHD Families Podcast. If you loved it, please share it on your socials. I want this to start a conversation about ADHD. If you want to make this mum do a little happy dance, please leave a review on iTunes. If you would like to know more about what we do, check out thefunctionalfamily.com. I truly hope that you enjoyed this podcast and you use it to create a wonderful, effective, joyful life with your beautiful children.